Monica, just from the study, what are the current shortcomings in public service delivery that have come out of the study?
Well, if you maybe look at it from the citizen point of view, we try to divide them into, put on a different hat each time. As a taxpayer, what do you expect? As a user of the services, what do you expect? And maybe just as one of the community members, what do you expect?
Would they have different expectations?
Yes, incidentally, they would have different expectations. If you wear the taxpayer's hat, you want to know, is my money that I'm paying over as taxes being used efficiently and responsibly? And I want to see accountability for that coming through from the government point of view. So they emphasize more cost effectiveness and proper utilization of that budget that they contribute to. They expect a lot more of feedback on how it is performing, not just at election period or at budgetary time. I want also to find out, if I'm a taxpayer, that you come and report back so often about how you've utilized my tax. And if you're a user of the service, if you wear the user hat, it tends to be different. All you want to see is that I need to access, quick access, and I need not to wait a long time if I want to access a public service. And if on the other side, I'm just, let's say, a citizen, a community member, I expect that people who are living within my area, that I don't see people who, there's dirt, or there's a burst pipe, or that there's overgrown grass. So it's very different that I want the people within my community to be living a healthy, vibrant life, and not just me. And I'm willing as a taxpayer even to contribute. In fact, quite interestingly, people were even willing, if necessary, to contribute more if they have the resources to make sure that their communities are well catered for.
If you can see the results, of course.
If you can see the results. They expect 4 things actually that came out through this framework. Number one is the outcomes that the MEC has just mentioned in terms of, let's say, education of public service in this case. A well-educated child at the end of the day who's able to be independent in future. The other one, expect a lot of engagement to come through from the public sector to one floor. I give you feedback, you come back and report back. The other one, I need flexibility in choosing what I need to do, where I need to access. But lastly, and that came out very, very strongly, they expect a lot of accountability from their public officials.
And of course, this accountability really ties in with those service delivery agreements you were talking about a little bit earlier in the programme, where you are going to be held accountable for funding and for the outcomes of that funding.
Absolutely, and I think it's going to be much easier for the public not just to look at a high school, because everybody knows what was the matric result in this particular high school, is it performing or not performing. They will be able to make similar decisions and choices about primary schools as well, because we will be doing standardized testing in grade 3, grade 6 and grade 9. These are going to be nationally organized, provincially supervised tests. So citizens will be able to know the health of the different schools in the province, right from primary level on an annual basis.
MEC, the third thing to come out of the study was in migration, so that's migrants coming into Johannesburg or Greater Johannesburg, whether it's from elsewhere in South Africa, from outside of the country. What sort of strain, though, does that then put onto the education system in Gauteng, and how do you cope with that when you have a budget and you have an outcome to deliver, and yet all of a sudden you have perhaps hundreds of thousands of people just arriving on our doorstep?
Look, it's a very serious challenge. Every year we have between 20 and 30,000 learners who arrive on our doorsteps when schools open in January, outside of the normal age cohort. So these are not grade R's or grade 1s that are arriving at schools because they've just grown up. These are people who have migrated into the province, people who haven't registered in the previous year. This particular year we had 25,000 people who arrived between the 13th of January and the 13th of February. And we were forced to run a massive operations centre across the province in Johannesburg. We have enormous pressure points in the Midrand area in the north of Johannesburg, as well as in the south in the informal settlements. And we have queues of parents and learners arriving at schools and wanting a place. And obviously we try very hard to provide that place, but it does impact on what you were talking about earlier in terms of quality of service. Because for every 35 to 40 learners you have to have one teacher. If you've got to produce this teacher at 1 week's notice. So that really what you're just trying to do is to get a warm body in front of a class. You may not necessarily have the best situation.
And of course it's also pushing your budget out, isn't it?
Well, yes. I mean, we plan for the influx because it happens every year. We do plan for it, but and we are now trying to plan by putting mobile classrooms into areas of high pressure and even employing additional teachers in advance. But nevertheless, it does put a lot of pressure on the system, and it does contribute to a perception by citizens that they're not getting access. What I think we want to say to citizens is we very much want to be able to give you the kind of education system you would want. We are going to open registration for 2011 in July. Please register your child in advance so that we can plan properly, and you shouldn't be in a situation in January where you could feel that you're being pushed from pillar to post.
Monica, how would citizens like the issue of in-migration dealt with by government?
The expectations of that actually is very, very high. Across all the cities that we went through, some migration from rural areas, especially into the cities, is a common trend. The uniqueness about this particular region is the undocumented workers that are coming through, or illegal immigrants coming through, and the strain that they put on the current services is what they feel is not being handled as efficiently as possible. I feel that government could be doing a lot more in handling that, in making sure that the borders are properly controlled and not as porous as they are, and that the people that are coming in here can be, that process should be handled in a more responsible manner, because they feel that the strain on what is rightfully due to them is not possible because of this unpredictability of the people that are coming through. That's the main concern that came through in our study.
Barbara, how does the government become more accountable to the people it services and more open to public scrutiny, perhaps?
Well, I think I've already spoken about the fact that we have to have clear outcomes so that everybody is able to measure us and we are able to measure ourselves. But nothing takes the place of hands-on personalized visits. I think that in this term of government we've put a lot of emphasis on public office bearers going to sites of service delivery. So I try on average to visit at least 2 schools a week. I know my colleague, the MEC...
Do they know when you're coming?
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, depending on the purpose of the visit. And what I like to do is to visit schools not in the context of cutting a ribbon or kissing a baby. I like to go and visit schools in a context where we can talk about the problems that they have, the improvements that they need to have. Because I think that it's very, very important for those who are in decision-making positions to be interacting directly with those who are at the coalface. So having that opportunity to listen to teachers, to listen to principals, to listen to learners themselves. Because unless you build that triangle of the parent, the teacher and the learner, you'll never get the education system right.
Is there follow-through from your department though? So you go to a school, you see what the problems are these problems addressed?
Well, that is part of what I have to do. One of our 4 strategic goals for this term of government is to make our districts more responsive and more supportive of schools. I think that one of the challenges in government is that, of course, government always has a regulatory function. But from my perspective, our regulatory function should be 20% and our support function to schools should be 80%. At the moment, it's the other way around. So this is something that we are working on, is to look at, first of all, how do we cluster schools in a geographic area, and secondly, how do we then cluster departmental officials at the district level, which is the local level, to service those schools in an integrated manner. At the moment, we have a situation where we have one official who is responsible for up to 20 to 25 schools. And that clearly is an unworkable situation, and it's going to result in a regulatory approach rather than a supportive approach.
You see, there's 2 aspects here. There's how the government perceives those perceptions and also how the citizens perceive government services.
And do you think the perceptions are very far apart at the moment of how government thinks it's doing and how citizens rate the government?
It also varies from service to service. There are some services where they are extremely satisfied, and here's an example that I would never find difficult to agree with. You'll find taxpayers are very satisfied with the level of service that SARS is providing, and quite willing at times to hand over their money because there is this perception that it is a well-run organization. Just that one example. And a number of other departments are there. A lot of perceptions are improving around the Gauteng provincial government's services. And yeah, especially around education in terms of the volumes that they bring in. The effort is there visible. It's in your face, especially this year. It's in your face. You can see the public officials in the communities a lot more frequently. Those kind of things do count.
Ladies, I'm afraid we're out of time. We have to leave it there, but thanks both very much for your insights this evening.
Thank you so much.
That's all we have time for you on Africa's Boardroom this week. My guests were Senior Executive of Health and Public Services for Accenture South Africa, Monica Rubombora, and Gauteng MEC for Education, Barbara Creasy.